Welcome back to Talking Trades. With me, as always, is Randy Beall, who is the business manager and financial secretary for the Atlanta North Georgia Building Trades, also known as GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com. So we were talking the last episode, and I got to a very big question that I get a lot. I get from my friends. I get from people on the job site when I'm talking to them about what we do. So I wanted to address that and have you take a stab at it.
Okay.
Why do labor unions always vote Democrat?
Well, first of all, we don't always vote Democrat. So we support Republican, Democrat, Independent. Doesn't really matter. I tell people we're partyless. We care about labor issues, period. I get the same question from people at my church, right? You know, automatically, anytime you vote for a pro-labor candidate, which a lot of times will be a Democratic person, a party, they immediately associate you as a liberal. Well, I'm far from a liberal person.
Yeah.
I'm a moderate.
Right.
But I always look at people and tell them, I don't have a party. I have a purpose. My purpose is to serve labor.
Same.
That's it. And I don't care who the person is. I care about what they stand for and how do they support working men and women. That's my biggest issue. All issues below that are secondary to me. I'm first going to give you support based on your position on labor. So, that's...
And not necessarily union labor, but labor issues, yeah?
Labor issues as a whole. And the AFL-CIO, they're the parent organization of all unions. So, a lot of members don't know this. Not the ALCU. I have to clarify that because some people get confused.
But ACLU, you mean?
ACLU, you said. But it's the AFL-CIO, which is the parent company or parent organization of all unions. And then under that, you have metal trades, which represents shipyard workers and railroad. And you have building trades, which represents building trades. You have teacher unions and organizations. But the AFL puts together a scorecard of labor issues. Now, let me preface this by saying not all of the issues that they put out there that are bills that I necessarily agree with that are labor issues. Okay? But there are a bunch of them that I will want to look at and see how an individual representative, congressperson, voted. I like to look at numbers. If you want to, we'll take a look at some numbers.
Can you show an example of that?
Sure, yeah. And I think our members need to really look at this stuff. So real simply.
So this is the AFLCIO.org.
So let's just show how we got here. I'm just going to back up.
/legislators.
So all I did was Google AFL-CIO voting records.
Okay.
I'm going to click on the very first thing, which is legislators.
Okay.
I'm going to go down to our state, Georgia, and then I'm going to change it to party, and I'm just going to look at Republicans first. Okay? So that's the process. I'm in the year 2021. I'm in the House.
Because they track it up to 2021 or
well, no, we can. Year? Well, yeah, they don't have 2022 yet, so the data, has to be uploaded and all that. We can go back as far as 2009, and I do want to look at some of that. But so, the first thing that I notice when I look at this lineup of Republican congressmen and lady is there's not much diversity there. It's the first thing that I noticed when I looked at this 3 weeks ago. I thought, wow, they all look like me, with the exception of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But that's fine. That's a secondary issue for me, to be honest with you, but it did stand out. So I just want to bring that up. But as we look across this, we're in the year 2021. We have the districts where they're at. You need to know your congressperson. Mine is Drew Ferguson. So District 3. So someone, if you don't know, Google it. Who is my congressman? And they will, there'll be a website. They'll come to punch your address in, and it'll tell you exactly who it is. So this is what's interesting to me is we're talking about just labor issues, and we'll look at some of them. But like Rick Allen, 0% Buddy Carter, 0%. This is for the year 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That means they voted for a labor issue 0% of the time in 2021. So we don't have to go down to them all. We can just look at them and see that all of them are 0 with the exception of Drew Ferguson, my rep. So I wanted to know, well, what the heck did Drew vote for and nobody else voted for, right? And let me back up and say to the right, I think on the screen, it says lifetime score. So that's lifetime on labor issues. Rick would have voted 10%.
Like lifetime being their tenure, whatever.
Their tenure,
whatever
however long they've been in Congress, right? Andrew, he's got a 0%. Marjorie, 0%. 7. So the greatest one is what, 14%, Drew and Austin Scott. 14% of the time they're voting for labor issues that affect working men and women.
Can you tell can you click through and show?
I can, yeah. So I'm gonna.
What the actual
so I
issues
wanted
are?
to know what did Drew vote for in this year.
Mhm.
So I click on Drew, brings up his picture, and now we look at the vote. So first we need to know the key. A fist means voted for working people.
Mm-hmm.
The red hat with a dollar sign means they voted against working people, and the snooze means they took a walk.
Okay.
They didn't vote. So
They abstained.
Build Back Better, didn't vote for it. Infrastructure, didn't vote for it. Now, I want to point out something on this infrastructure. I was at the Operating Engineers Union meeting, and they had 2 people coming up to take oath joining the union. And in that oath, it was something I hadn't heard anybody else, and there may be other unions that have it, but in their oath, it said that they will pledge to buy American-made, union-made products whenever available, yada, yada, yada. And I like that American-made and union-made, right? They're not always synonymous, right? Look at the last line of this bill. Now, I know this isn't the entire bill. The bills are 500 pages, but it says, this bill also includes labor standards guaranteeing that the jobs created have family-supported wages, as well as Buy America provisions that will bolster U.S. manufacturing. Now, it passed the House because, quite honestly, it was under Democratic control.
In 21,
But he voted against that. And so now I have an issue with Drew because when I go and talk to him, we make our trip up to Washington every year. I want to know why he voted against that. And I hate to be this cynical, but did it not have enough pork in it for him? I mean, let's be honest. A lot of these bills have people say pork, right? Maybe it didn't have enough for him in it to vote that he could bring back to Georgia, or maybe he was just totally fundamentally against infrastructure, but our country's crumbling.
I wonder if he would say, well, we have an alternative to that includes that stuff, but doesn't include some of the other pork that he doesn't like. I don't know.
It could. He could say that. So we going down, and I found the one thing that he voted for, and here it is. It's the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act.
Legislation would close gaps in current law, creating a clear national standard for reasonable workplace accommodations for pregnant workers, so they're not pushed out of the workforce.
Okay, so that act, just by the summary, again, if you really want to read, you got to go read the entire bill, right? But anyway, it essentially protected women who are pregnant from losing their job, and it also created accommodations for them to make sure they're not pushed out of the workforce. So that's the one he voted for. Now, what I find odd about that is none of the other Republicans voted for that.
Huh.
And so I'm like, so what did Drew see that somebody else didn't see? What compelled him to vote for that? I'm glad he did. I think that's a great thing, but I don't understand why the others voted against it. Mm-hmm. So, those kind of things make me want to ask questions. But as we scroll on down, Paycheck Fairness Act, DREAM Act, Violence Against Women Act, and that's not to say you can't read into these things. It doesn't mean Drew wants women to have violence against them.
Yeah.
All right. There's something in that bill he doesn't like. I don't know what it is, but if that's something that meant near and dear to my heart, I would want to know that he is my rep, right?
Yeah.
So what I do,
I wonder what's lumped in with all those things.
That's right. So this is what I encourage people to do, and you can go all the way down, and there's actually 2 pages, and that's the last one, the budget resolution. But so what I would encourage people to do is look at this information. Now, all of these bills, some of them are going to mean nothing to some people.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. There are some labor issues in here that mean something to us. The Build Back Better Act, I think that's the one that had prevailing wage stuff in it.
Yeah.
That would help protect union jobs and create more union jobs. That's a big bill. People ought to look into that and know how your particular congressman votes.
Click on the bill back.
You can. You actually can click on it.
Okay.
And but it won't give you the whole bill, but you can Google HR 5376 and it'll come up. But what this will do now is it'll tell you how everybody in the states voted for it. Yes, no, and so forth.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say is a simple. I think this is a good way for people to educate themselves on how partisan politics has become. You can scroll down through here, see the donkey and the elephant, and just look at a yes, a yes, a yes, no, yes, no. How can legislation be that partisan? And it's not the only one. There's so many bills, and I'll show you something that I thought was interesting. So I'm a data guy. I like data. And so I'm going to go back and, just trying to think. So how far are we getting away from helping working men and women? So again, I'm back at the beginning of this, but I'm going to change this to 2013.
Yeah, go back to 2011 just because that was the
2011.
We talked about the previous podcast about
go to Georgia.
Union favorability.
I'm going to go to Democrat.
Okay.
76, 90, 100, and 97. Okay. Which we would expect that on labor issues from Democrats. Now, look, to be honest with you, John Barrow came out of southeast Georgia. He's no longer the rep there. I'm not going to say it's because of this gap, but that's not the kind of support we would expect. I'll be honest with you. I don't care D or R again. I want them 100% voting for labor.
Uh-huh.
That's our working men and women, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I thought was interesting. Keep in mind, what did we just see on 2021? What was the percentages? 0, 0, 0, and a 5.
The lifetime score was between 5, 14, or 0 or whatever.
So who was president in 2011?
Barack Obama.
Right. So we had our first African-American Democrat president. Mm-hmm. I would expect these numbers to be low, personally. Now, what I find interesting is we go to 13, look at what the numbers did. 24, 15, 19, 14, 16, 14, 19, 19. And if I just went back a couple of years, they were zeros. So, you got to dive into, there's 2012, you can go way up. And I'll take you a little further up. Go to 19. Look at the percentages. This is when we had a Republican president.
Uh-huh.
But they voted on labor issues over 0.25% of the time, except for Jody Heiss, 15%.
So go to 21 now.
All right, let's look at 20.
Okay.
We're still good percentages with the exception of Tom Graves. And I say good percentages. Again, I don't think anything's good, but they're better than 0.
They're fewer than they were the year before.
And then we go to 21.
Wow.
We're 0. So, of course, what are we getting closer to? You get 1 year post an election, presidential election, and all of a sudden we become very partisan on how we do things. And you'll see much divide in labor issues when it comes to party. And, if I look at the Democrat, our members want to know, well, why do y'all seem like you always support Democrat? Okay. 2021 Republicans, again, 0.005%. That was one issue, the pregnancy women, right, workplace. I go to Democrat, same year. Nobody's under 100%. So
depends on the bills, I guess, that come up that year, too.
That would make a difference. But in this particular year, so you tell me, if you ran a labor organization, if you were the leader, and your job is to protect and help
And promote.
working men and women and promote
Yeah.
and organize and gain more market share
Yeah.
and help their health and welfare. And you looked at these numbers, how could you not support people that supported you 100% of the time
Yeah.
in 2021?
Yeah.
And we could go back. I mean, I think we should. You go back to 19. Well, let's just look at Lifetime. Lifetime tells a story.
Yeah.
94, 98, 99, 98, 97.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not support people who support you? So, when I look at these numbers, I'm going to go back to Republican. I'm going to go to 2021. So, Lifetime, Drew Ferguson happens to be my rep. He's at 14%, and Austin Scott's at 14%.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that number, but I'll take that number over Marjorie Taylor Greene is 0%, or Rick Allen, even 10%. But
do you feel like the rank and file member feels like those things get conflated with social issues they don't agree with, and they're not willing to do the research or whatever to find out? They just assume that they're going to vote that way because of the social issues rather than the actual.
100%. My nephew, he's an attorney here in Georgia, and he told me, and I never really thought of this, but it started with Reagan. The air traffic controllers, busted the union.
Yeah.
By the way, Reagan was head of the actors union. Let's don't forget he was a union leader. He was a voted leader of a union that ended up busting a union.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I always find that interesting, but in that era, the non-working side, call that Republican or even some Democrats at that point. When we just saw John Barrow had 76%, not 100. So it's not always an R. But anyway, they figured out that if they can keep a few issues in the front of media, now it's social media, but in the media, whether it was, and I'll say them, it's abortion,
Guns,
and transgender, gay, those three things. If I can keep you talking about those three things,
yeah,
as if somebody's ever going to do anything about them.
right.
Think of how long, 80 to now, and we won't get in deep into the abortion thing, but think that's 40 years, my math's right, that it took them to do something about an issue that they had in forefront, right?
Right.
All right, so they have figured out that if I can get you talking about those three things, you'll vote against your pocketbook every time.
That's crazy, man.
But it's true.
Yeah.
And so, people will go to the poll and vote over those three issues with no knowledge of any labor issue.
So I wonder if, looking in this thing, about 2012, I think, is sort of when social media as a communication tool sort of ran the entire bell curve in most people.
Mm-hmm.
My mother has a my 87-year-old mother has a Facebook page, right?
Right.
So I wonder if the divisiveness started getting worse at that point.
Well, and the data's interesting because when you look at it, like I pulled up 2012, and I'm just going to look at Republican because I'll look at Democrat. I'm sure.
Are there any independents?
It's 100%.
Just for
no independent.
No independents.
Yeah. So the Democrat was 100% on all labor issues that's not sorted by Georgia. I apologize. Now it's Georgia. So Georgia was 100%. So if I look at the Republican side on labor as related to the AFL-CIO.
So that's 2012 you're looking at.
This is 2012. So, there was a low year, right? But that number goes up in 13.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's up in 14, 16, was really high in 19. Mm. So I think I didn't look in let's look in 16. The percentages went down from 15. Now, they actually went up 15. Well, that would have been beginning of an election cycle, would it not?
Yeah.
They would have been running for president. The vote took in, right?
Yeah.
So It don't surprise me that percentages go down because it's partisan politics at its best.
Yeah.
So, whenever after elections happen, percentage-wise, there's a low year. It's interesting to me to look at, so how many bills were there and, why would they vote against them?
Yeah.
I think this is a great tool. I think that people need to get into the details.
Yeah.
Because, again, I want to make it clear, not all of these issues you will care about. AFL says you should, but most people won't.
Look at there. This bill would make it more difficult for shareholders to receive impartial advice prior to voting on management proposals.
Yep. So I just think our members are not educated. Here's what I tell people, Rut, and I say this to people at our church that question me on how I vote. Let me go back to there. Is this. Just be educated.
Right. Suffice to say, there's a lot there.
There's
predicated on the bills that come up during that year. It's predicated
100%.
on who's in office and so
who's
forth.
running for office.
But do your homework.
And if you think about it, I mean, I'm a little cynical on politics because, I believe that I don't know that I have a party.
Same.
I don't. I just vote for people who support labor and other issues that are important to me. Labor leads the list, okay? Yeah. Until which time I leave office, labor will lead my thinking.
Right.
Now, once I leave here, it may be something, maybe it's retirement issues at that point. Who's going to help me out with my retirement? But I think that all I would ask members to do is don't blindly vote.
Yeah. Don't
blindly vote for a Democrat. Don't blindly vote for a Republican. Look at the issues. Look at how they vote. One thing we can always do is hold our legislators accountable. Mm-hmm. How they vote on your issue. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know this. I'm going to give you a piece of trivia that I don't think a lot of people know, and I know our members don't know this. But the most gun legislation that was passed under a president, this is the way I was heard it told. I don't know if it's actually the most, but happened under Obama. Okay? There was
rephrase that if you would.
Well, there's two pieces of gun legislation that was signed under Obama. Mm-hmm. Now, most of our members, if I pose that question to them or that statement, they would say what a person in my choir at church said. I knew it. I told you they were going to take away our guns and they were going to take away our ammo and all that. And I said, do you realize those two legislations gave you more right to carry? So there was two bills that was under Reagan, after Reagan was attempted to assassination. Yeah. Remember, Brady got shot.
Yeah.
So they had the Brady bill. A couple of things in that Brady bill that hidden deep down where nobody ever reads, right, was it hindered your ability to carry a gun on Amtrak. Mm-hmm. Could not do it, and you could not take a gun into a national park. Obama overturned both of those. Huh. We don't talk about that. All the news media, but again, news media, there is no news media. It's propaganda media.
Right.
You got, CNN's going to lean Democrat.
Yeah.
Fox is going to lean Republican.
And those guys aren't even in, they're not even setting the conversation anymore. It's all done on podcasts and,
100%
form stuff.
But even in those settings, they're going to push an agenda.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I think just recently in the news, it was what Fox had to pay out a bunch of money because Sean Hannity and others admitted that they had to say the election, election was, they were saying the election was rigged or whatever because they were told to, because they pandered to their, and it cost them $750 million. That was a lawsuit. It was just out. But anyway, when it comes to the, like the gun thing, I'm not saying that's a reason you should vote for Obama or not have voted for him.
Right.
Just know the truth.
Right.
He didn't take away guns.
Yeah.
He actually enhanced your ability to carry.
Yeah.
So, give credit where credit's due. Give blame where blame is due.
Yeah.
Right?
This tool is great for people to, educate themselves. One of the misnomers I get when people understand I work for labor and they say, well, that they're not as patriotic. I'm like, have you ever been to a union meeting? You ever been to any union function? No. I said, well, here's the first two things they do. Stand up, put their hand on their heart, say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then somebody returns grace. every function I've ever been, they stand up, face the flag, put their hand over their heart, recite the Pledge of Allegiance,
and say a prayer
in unison, and then return grace, say a prayer.
You know, I've said that often too, and I'm not saying there isn't some companies in corporate America that don't do the same thing. I would say that a majority does not.
Oh, they don't.
And you know,
Totally don't.
you know what I mean? Maybe Chick-fil-A, maybe they'll return grace. A great organization, or appears to be, right?
And then Union Sportsman Alliance.
Yep.
You know, they work specifically through the union channels to promote conservancy and wildlife, management, and hunting and fishing and bringing the kids up and teaching them the outdoors and all that stuff. So
yeah, and so when we talk about the reason why I think this is important, first of all, get to know your rep, and get to know maybe the people that might run against them, because don't go off of what the far left or the far right is being said on social media, because you're talking about the two extremes of reality, right? And so, that's what I think. I don't know, but I think I can't. So I'm going to speak off me. I can't swallow the far left agenda. I can't swallow the far right agenda.
Amen.
So, but if you listen and talk to people, Sanford Bishop, I'm just going to throw names out. I don't think he's against you having a gun. Now, the far left of the party wants gun control, but that's not him.
Right.
Again, get to know your legislator, get to know what they vote for, and understand who they are.
And get to know the issues that are coming up on the floor. And I think we could do some cool podcasts on kind of what's coming up.
Absolutely. And it's not about telling people how to vote. It's telling them how to be educated to vote.
Yeah, these are the issues.
And the state does the same thing.
Yeah.
Not AFL, but you can go look at records on how your person votes. I want to say one last thing about voting. It's just as important to me on how somebody votes or if they didn't vote. Because sometimes you'll see a snooze out there, and a snooze can mean a lot of things. Now, look, we pay them to go there and vote.
Yeah.
That's what we pay them to do. Now, you'll watch, if you've been around politics as long as I have, and a little bit cynical opinion maybe, but I think I'm accurate here. There's a few reasons why somebody doesn't vote. Could be a family emergency at home. They're not in Washington. Understand. They don't want to be held their feet to the fire on how they voted is the majority of the reason. And I've had legislators tell me, Randy, I can't support you in that vote, but I'll take a walk. So now, I think walks are interesting. They're going to not take a pass, right? Because they don't want to make us mad, but they don't want to vote, whatever. They don't want to be on the record, right? But they already know how it's going to vote. People think that it's a mystery. They know they're no different than anybody else. They know how to count votes. And before every once in a while, you'll see legislation fail because somebody can't count, but that's rare. They know how people are going to vote. It's a record. And, people in extreme areas are going to hold the party lines and not worry about working men and women. I have no use for them.
Yeah.
Democrat or Republican.
Agreed.
And partisan politics is dominating this country. And people just need to be educated.
Yeah. Well, it's a good way to wrap this up. This is a great resource. I'll put this in the notes.
Okay.
I'll put some other links in there that people can do their research. All we're asking is people to do your research.
Yeah, do your research. Yeah. And you know what? Look at other states too. Just look at how I like data, so I like to look. And and it's more about how I want to know what the individuals think. And here's the last thing that I would say about this. When you find that issue that burns your button, right? Call your congressperson and say, why didn't you vote for, we have a majority Republican, right? Why didn't you vote for this issue? This is important to me. Why didn't you?
Agreed.
Put them on record.
Yeah. Hold them accountable.
That's what I got to say.
Good. Great discussion. Thanks for helping us dispel these questions, and looking forward to another episode of Talking Trades.
Sounds good. Thanks.
We're out.